last Tsar and the last Romanov was Nicholas II. When he became Tsar, he vowed to continue his family's 400-year-old absolute rule over the Russian Empire. Only 11 years later, in 1905, a general strike forced the Tsar to create a representative legislature. The First World War began in 1914. Russia suffered terrible losses, and the Tsar's government seemed helpless. In February 1917, it was overthrown by revolution. Women rioted, demanding bread. They were joined by workers and soldiers. The Tsar abdicated, and a liberal government was formed. At the same time, revolutionary councils called Soviets were created by representatives of workers, soldiers, and peasants. The war situation worsened. Peasant soldiers deserted by the thousands, and the people were on the edge of starvation. A small party of Marxist intellectuals who called themselves Bolsheviks adopted the slogan, "Land, peace, bread, all power to the Soviets." And in October, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, seized control of the government. Communist rule had begun. It was a terrible time. Civil war raged across the country. Many of the revolution's democratic ideals were lost before the struggle ended in 1921. Lenin died in 1924, and one of his aides, Joseph Stalin, became the new leader of the Communist Party. Under Stalin, the government began a forced modernization of the economy. It was Stalin's objective to make the Soviet Union into one of the world's great industrial powers within just a few short years. To do this, he initiated the first of what was to be a series of 5-year plans, which controlled every aspect of the Soviet economy. Workers were assigned jobs by the state and forced to increase their productivity. Private agriculture virtually ceased. The land was organized into huge collective farms, which were controlled by the central government. Since everyone was a worker, nursery schools took over much of the task of child rearing. For the Soviet people, the 30s were a time of hardships. Individual freedom disappeared, and secret police arrested millions of people as Stalin eliminated his rivals in the Communist Party and all other potential opposition. Still, the people worked hard, some because they had to, others because they believed they were building socialism. Although the unrealistic goals of the 5-year plans were not met, the nation became a leading industrial power before 1940. The Second World War broke out in 1939, and in 1941, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. Probably 20 million Soviet citizens died. The destruction was enormous, but the war gave people a renewed spirit of patriotism and unity. When peace came, the Soviet Union emerged as the strongest nation in Europe. Over 30 years have passed since the end of what the Russians call the Great Patriotic War. But as in no other nation, memories of those times are still kept alive. The memories and the pain. For many, the war was their greatest moment of glory, and the time when all Soviet people were brought together against the common enemy. Even more than by Marxist-Leninist theories, the Soviet people are moved by love of motherland and fear of war. This may be the key to most people's words and actions. The future is in our children, say parents as well as the state. Because most women work, an essential element in Soviet family planning is to have a live-in grandmother for child watching. Russian grandmothers, perhaps more than grandmothers elsewhere, indulge pamper, and spoil. In the Soviet Union, all health care and education are free. But schools are controlled by the state, and the object of education is to create ideal Soviet citizens. Children usually enter nursery school at age 3, and there it is the group that counts. The ever-present ideal for young people is Lenin. For children, he is everything that is good and admirable. They learn this from their nursery songs, from their picture books, and from their teachers. Lenin's image appears everywhere, and he has become almost a godlike figure. Schoolwork is hard. It concentrates on science and math. Memorizing is stressed. Discussion is not encouraged. And of course, there is always a strong emphasis on political training. Children are taught that the downfall of capitalism and the ultimate victory of communism are scientifically proven to be inevitable.
Добавь, пожалуйста, что они еще делали?
Кстати, и она готовила ребятам обед, а они гуляли.
Career training starts early. Youngsters who show talent in science, languages, or the arts go to specialized schools. Competition among students can be fierce. People with special skills, including dancers and athletes, enjoy many privileges. After high school, many students attend technical institutes. University education is possible for only a few. The pressure is great, and so are the rewards. For these are future party members. They will be the elite, who will have the income and the connections to live well. Children as young as 7 can join official youth organizations. Not all of them do, but even at this age, it is clear that in the Soviet Union, there are many advantages to belonging. The pressure is heavy to join the Young Pioneers for children ages 9 to 14. It is in the Pioneers that serious political indoctrination begins. To get ahead in life, a young person must become part of the system. Both schoolwork and after-school activities teach collective values. The ideal is a person totally free of individualistic ideas, a team player. At age 14 comes the decision whether to join Komsomol, the Young Communists League. Members of Komsomol may get preference for higher education and jobs, for they are already part of the communist political structure. It is the Communist Party which controls the Soviet Union. Although Soviet citizens generally support the party and its decisions, membership is restricted to about 5% of the population. Elections are held regularly, and everyone is required to vote. But only the one political party is permitted. For each office, there is only one candidate nominated by the party, and that candidate is always elected. From the communist point of view, this is a triumph of democracy. Since everyone in the Soviet Union is a worker, and since the Communist Party represents the workers, there is simply no need for any other party. Trade unions exist. Almost everyone belongs to one. But because strikes are forbidden and collective bargaining is very limited, unions serve mainly to communicate the official line to the workers. There is no unemployment because the government guarantees that everyone has a job. About half the workers in the Soviet Union are women. They have reached the highest levels of every profession and in government. But equality for women is still an unsolved problem of Soviet socialism. It is true that most doctors, most teachers, and most lawyers are women, but in the Soviet Union, these are low status and low paying jobs. Leaders of industry, government, and the professions are almost always men. In the Communist Party, only 1 of every 5 members is a woman, and women hold none of the real power positions. Equality has its drawbacks. Women do the same heavy work as men. In fact, they may do more, for it is usually men who supervise while women labor. Young people still get married, of course. It is usual for both a husband and a wife to have full-time jobs. But his job will probably pay more. Even though she works, it is the woman's role to shop, cook, take care of the house. And of course, she should be a good mother. Large families are not common in the cities, though the government encourages them because most women work and apartments are small. To see a woman with more than 1 child may indicate that she and her husband are members of a privileged group. The showplace store called GUM in Moscow is always crowded with shoppers hoping to find scarce consumer goods. The Soviet economy, regulated by a central plan, puts a low priority on things like fashionable clothing that are not necessities. Until recently, the Central Planning Committee felt that clothes should be warm and serviceable for work rather than stylish. One thing is certain, clothes must be warm, for in most parts of the Soviet Union, the winters are long and cold. Russians are used to winter and enjoy it. More than once, the cold has helped defeat invaders of the motherland. Though generally atheistic, some Soviets recently have come to appreciate religion as an important part of their country's history and traditions. The Soviet government still represses the teaching and practice of all religions. In this land, all forms of communication are controlled by the state. Every word in every newspaper and in every book must be approved before it is published. Few Soviet citizens can understand the American notion of a free press, but many would like freer access to Western scientific and technical ideas. The Bolshevik revolutionaries recognized that the arts could be powerful tools in molding the new society. Motion pictures in particular were used to bring socialist ideas to the people. The fine arts of music and painting can also carry political messages. And since the 1930s, there has been no place for the artist who is an individual. All professional artists are workers and, of course, belong to a union. An artist whose work criticizes the motherland, its leaders, or socialism is certain to be expelled from the union. If that happens, there is no legal way for the artist to make a living. Those who do not conform to the official style of socialist realism are no longer arrested as they were in Stalin's time. But in general, Art must be useful, and experimentation is discouraged. In the West, blue jeans and rock music are in part a revolt against an The government has recognized the power of rock and now approves rock bands whose songs express correct attitudes. The post-war generation has high expectations. Though the Soviet Union is not yet a consumer society, people linger over displays of automobiles or color televisions with the hope that soon they will own one. Like much else, the decision is not theirs to make. It is the government's. For the Soviet Union has a controlled economy, not one of supply and demand. When the government decides to give priority to a project as it did to the Moscow subway in the early 30s, the results are impressive. The United States, by encouraging private car ownership, has done little to promote low-cost public transportation. The opposite is true in the Soviet Union, where most people travel by train, bus, and streetcar. Recently, however, more and more private cars are seen on the streets. Automobile production has been increased, but not enough to satisfy the demand. In Soviet cities, housing construction has priority. The Soviet industrial might has been turned to the biggest housing program in the history of the world. Innovative building techniques use preformed sections. Although the quality is uneven, whole cities can now be built in just a short time, using mostly semi-skilled labor. Outside the big cities, the modern world sometimes seems to disappear. Unpainted wooden houses and unpaved streets look very much as they did at the turn of the century. 100 million Soviets live in small villages from above the Arctic Circle to the warm shores of the Black Sea. About 20% of the Soviet Union's workforce is occupied in agriculture on collective and state farms. Going east toward Siberia, the villages thin, the birches change to pines, and the land goes on and on. Siberia is rich with agriculture and industry. It is a varied territory, 50% larger than the United States, and yet it is only part of the Russian Republic, which also includes European Russia. There are 14 other republics in the Soviet Union and many minority nationalities. 47% of the people are not Russian. Even here in Central Asia, the economy is controlled from Moscow. A great many of the managers and technicians are Russians. In a large farmer's market in the Republic of Armenia, the produce of a rich land is laid out aisle upon aisle. Farmers' markets are the only legal form of free enterprise in the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, very little of the fine fruit and vegetables of this southern republic reaches the northern parts of the country. In spite of centralization, most of the republics maintain distinctive traditional ways of life. A policy which works well in Moscow may have to be modified in the Ukraine, or Kazakhstan, or Georgia. The decades since the end of World War II are the longest period of peace and stability the Soviet Union has known. Despite the high cost of Stalinism and the war, great progress has been made, and Soviet society and its political system will continue to evolve. There is still much to be accomplished in improving the quality of life and in guaranteeing human rights.